Hey guys, welcome back to Chris and Retro. Tonight's video is going to be on controlling behavior. I've talked in the show before about the fact that I have three triggers for my addiction. One is controlling behavior, procrastination is the second one, and then fear. They all dance together pretty crazy for me. So if I have a situation that I don't really have control over, it starts to generate some fear in my mind. And it might start as something minor, and I'm not terrified of it, but it's something that's causing some fear or at least some anxiety about not getting, let's just say something not getting done. Can go to more serious things, but let's just say it's something not getting done. As I feel like that's getting a little overwhelming, I'll probably put that off. And that's where the procrastination comes in. The procrastination comes in, with all procrastination, things start to pile up. In and of itself, I start to lose more control, which generates more fear. Now, as you can see, the cycle just continues until it stops, either through me stopping it or it getting so bad that I just can't take it anymore and I hide. And I typically, historically, have hidden bottle. So that's why controlling behavior is such an important subject for me in terms of how I deal with it, how I think about it, and what I do every single day to handle my tendency to do that. And I have obviously have to avoid procrastination to get there. But tonight, I want to talk about a few things that are related to controlling behavior that I hope is going to be helpful to you. Before I get started, I want to just tell you guys that Sundays from now on, for a while anyway, we're going to try some Sunday special episode. I'm going to go back to the signature moments I used to do when the show first started, but I'm going to do them. There'll be a different thumbnail. If you could see last Sundays, we had a different thumbnail on it, and it's going to be just a conversation I'll be having with Sam, and we're going to talk about her process as she's going through her programs and some of the things that she's going through. And what we want to do as a couple is to help you walk through your situation from really two sides of the coin. I'm on one side free, managing the family. She's on the other side dealing with her situation. And hopefully as we go through our journey, and the good, the bad, the ugly, we're going to be authentic with you, and hopefully it's something that can help you and at least feel like you've got fellow travelers if you're going through a similar situation. Second matter, I just want to say thank you to Connections Round and Recovery and Penn. They had me over to present to their people on Recovery Day. And I really appreciate the fact that I was able to have that conversation with them. It means a lot to share your story. When giving back, like that's the way I fortify my journey. And it was really beneficial to be there. I definitely don't like sharing a drunkalog as a person in one of the meetings I was in a while back talked about it. The drunkalog made me laugh. I don't want to share that. I want to just share connectivity to say I understand your story because I've been through probably similar things, and then talk about some of the things I've learned along the way from people I've traveled with. For tonight's video, I want to get into this thought. And if you could, for me right now, just in your head, ponder all the things that are in your mind. What are the things that are troubling you, possibly fearful, circumstances that are heavy or not so heavy, just occupying your mind. Think about the things that are occupying your mind for a minute. Worry, concern, your plans, future plans, future concerns about other people's decisions, thoughts about other people's decisions, all those things. And hold that thought. Think about how much of your mind is occupying that. And I'll come along with you in some things that I've learned. I was at a meeting a week ago Sunday. I'm not really a good speaker meeting guy, and I'll tell you why, because I have the attention span of a rabid chinchilla. I cannot hold to meetings, and that's why I make these videos short too, is because I want to make sure that you guys are getting something out of them. And maybe I'm just being selfish, but I don't watch things that are that long, and I can't sit in meetings. Any meeting really of any kind. I'm horrible in business meetings. People don't like to sit. Well, they like to sit next to me because I try to entertain, but they don't like to sit next to me if they're really trying to get something out of what's going on, because about halfway through I start drifting and picking on people in the room and that type of thing. So meetings for recovery are no different. Well, I was in a meeting last week, and there was a speaker meeting, and the second speaker really held me. There was a lot about his story that as he was sharing it, I was like, oh my God, man, that's so similar to mine. I mean, car crashes, even right down to there was a story he had towards the end where he came screeching out. Now, this guy was a lawyer. He came to a screeching halt. He was bomb drunk. I guess he already had a DWI under his belt and he had no license. He was AUO. And so he's driving this car through Rochester and crashed into a railing, left the car, and went to a bar where the car crashed against the railing. He's sitting there on the phone with blood trickling down his neck, and the cops found him in this bar and brought him back to the scene. This railing had already been hit once, and when he crashed in the railing, the steel garter had gone straight through the windshield and nicked his neck. It didn't stab through his head, it nicked his neck, but missed him by that much. And he was so blackout drunk, he just wasn't aware of it. If he was aware of it, he didn't recall it even in a short time afterwards. That's how rough shape he was. I had a situation back. I didn't get a DWI out of this thing, but I probably could have. But I drove straight into a fence at an angle with a pickup truck in the snow, and I had a fence stake, the latitude fencing. There was wood come right straight through the windshield of the truck too, right by my head. And I just saw those types of things. You kind of like, oh my God, I had the same thing happen, you know? And we both counted our blessings that it could have been so much worse. But as he was talking through this, and it wasn't even really so much he was saying, except for the fact he kind of had another relatable place where he's in his head too much. He had some funny things. He was talking about the fact that, you know, when he finally became a senior in high school, the Catholic Church had had enough of him and he had enough of it. And so he just rejected religion entirely. And, you know, these moments where avoiding car crashes and all these other things started to get him reconnected with a higher power in his recovery. But as I started thinking about some of the troubles that he was having, it was really about controlling behavior. And it's an area where I have the same thing. And so remember what I had you hold on to is these thoughts that are going on in your head. And this is what happened to me about halfway through his presentation. It was probably because the first speaker maybe sprinkled in some of this as well. And between my own journey and the stuff that these two people were describing in their lives, I was just like, oh man, you know, I had one of these thoughts. So think about all those things that you ponder. Now take that list and think about what of that list that you can affect really at all. I'm thinking of mine. And as I think through my list, most of what I worry about in a day, easily 90% of what I occupy my mind obsessing over to fix, I have virtually no control over the outcome. No matter how much time I dedicate to planning, no matter how many coulda, shoulda, wouldas I put on that whole thing, no matter what I do to contemplate the avoidable or to consider the nature of what I can do that could be done to make it better, out of probably 90% of what I think about all day long is obsessing over things that I have zero control over. So if I think about them, it changes no outcome. If I don't think about them, it doesn't change any outcome. The only thing I'm changing is possessing my brain and giving rent, as they say, to things that are not beneficial to me moving forward, and doing the one thing I have control over, and that is improving my performance as a person in recovery, as a father, as a partner, as a community member. I'm preoccupied with things I have no control over and completely taking up space that I could be doing over the things that I do have control over and I'm most obligated to handle. I'm curious what your list was, if you're honest with yourself. Of course, we can think of, well, if I do this or do that, then if they do this or do that, then maybe these things will work out and we'll be okay. Well, that's all wishful thinking, but it's not really having control over circumstance. You can wonder and wish and hope, but are you really having any impact or control with that energy? It's such a discipline and such a forceful rigor to get to a place where we control those and capture those thoughts, because that is something we have control over, is capturing those thoughts and then taking those things that I have no control over, the things I cannot change, and turning them over to a higher power. Now, in the instance that this gentleman talked about in his story of his life, he did turn it over to his higher power. We happen to believe in the same higher power, God, and he found the same victory I did in that exercise. But what it did call into question for me was, while I speak of my triggers, and I have all along, there's a lot of nuance to it and a lot of literally daily obsession with this stuff that can derail me and cause me all kinds of problems. Now, as I was preparing for this video, there's a couple things that really kind of hit me as I was doing a little bit of work, and I'm going to share a little clip with you at the end here. But controlling behavior is a very important element for all of us in terms of how we deal with it. It destroys relationships aside from addiction, but it can very much be a behavior that causes you to get there and causes trauma on others, but also can cause you problems as you go through life, to the point that making addiction a more available option to you. And I know for sure that's the case with me. So when we're thinking of controlling behavior, there are remedies for it. One of those is the spiritual remedy, and that's what we hear about in the Serenity Prayer. You know, we're talking about the things we cannot change, you know, and knowing the difference. We're talking about accepting the things I can change, not dealing with the things I can't change, and knowing, asking God to help us know the difference between the things we're supposed to be dealing with and stuff we're not supposed to be dealing with. You know, that's also a controlling behavior coping remedy, I would say, not coping mechanism, but remedy. The second thing is this plain old that comes up all the time, acceptance. You know, accepting it as it is, and recognizing it's not so much that I'm not changing what's going on in the world around me. All these things that are in my head that I obsess over all the freaking time, 95% of them are things outside of me in the world around me. And what I'm really obligated to do is focus on me and the changes that need to come inside of me. You know, we do 12-step work, and 12-step work is so important because if you actually do the work and don't just read through the steps and know all the chants and rants and bumper stickers of treatment, but you actually are not treatment, but of AA programs or NA programs or whatever 12-step program you're in, whether it's Celebrate Recovery or some other version of it, just knowing what the steps are doesn't really do you well. All it does is just mean that you know the lingo and you can go to the club and chit chat. But if you actually are working the steps, and this is something I've really kind of emphasized on, even as much as today, where I've taken out actual worksheets and I'm going back to the steps in a program that, in a supplement to the program that I attend, that shows what questions should I ask myself as I'm considering each one of these steps, so that I'm actually working them and really doing the effort part rather than just knowing the language. And so with that, you know, controlling behavior for me is something I have to address. And as I think about the way that my mind is occupied with all this stuff, as I wash that out, if I just take a minute and wash that all out and then just boil it down to what I have control over and what I should be focusing on, I start creating more rigorous plans around them and things I can manage. I'm not as exhausted because it's not burdened with all these other things. I turn them over to my higher power because I say I have faith in him. So I do turn them over to my higher power. And sometimes it's tough because sometimes you turn over people that you love. You know, you're asking God to take care of your kids. As a father, that's very difficult to say, I'm not going to worry about that. That's in God's hands. Man, that's the toughest thing in the world for me to do. I want to control and keep them safe and everything else, when the reality, even in that controlling place, as somebody that reasonably can fight a pretty darn good fight for my kids, I would be willing to go against anybody fighting them. If it was protecting my kids, I'd fight Mike Tyson, and you guys might laugh, but I know I'd lose, but I'd still fight him for my kids. And what would that do? I have no control over that circumstance because I would lose that fight, and I still am not helping my children. But that's the emasculating part about controlling behavior too, is that it helps us recognize if we are too controlling, at some point you're getting to a point where you're defeated because you realize you can't handle it anyway. So you take these controlling elements, wash your brain free of them, turn them over to your higher power, and move on to the things that you're supposed to handle. Now with that, I found an interesting video, and I'm going to share it with you. Dr. Jordan Peterson and Russell Brandt did a quick video on step 1, and I will tie back into why step 1 is something I think is relevant for this conversation. I hope you enjoy it.
You are powerless over your addiction and that your life has become unmanageable. Just admitting this is the first step is acknowledging that you are powerless over your addiction and that your life has become unmanageable. Just admitting this is, I don't want to be in this situation.
Okay, so there's 2 parts to that.
So as we go through the steps, we always start with that. Again, it's the cliche. It almost becomes cliche when you're in it. We know what the first one is. And I've even said on the show, the first step is, you know, your life is unmanageable and I can't do it anymore. I can't take this anymore. Step 2 is saying there is a God. Step 3 is saying I give it to you because I know you'll take it. That's generally how I've thought about it, but there's definitely more work to do so that you can get off to the races here and actually get a life that means something, that puts addiction behind you and hurts and hangups behind you. These steps work for all kinds of ways of recovering your life and dealing with very hurtful things or damage you've caused yourself. Now, I thought this was a very interesting way that Jordan Peterson gets into this.
Admission, eh? One is that you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I'll back it up.
And so
that, in this situation.
Okay, so there's 2 parts to that admission, eh? One is that you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And I guess there's 3. You're in trouble and it's serious. Things could be better. And you don't have the wherewithal at the moment to make them better. So the thing that's interesting about that is there's a kind of radical humiliation and humility that goes along with that. So you say, I have a problem.
So you don't have the wherewithal to handle it. So the very basis of turning your life around is recognizing you don't have any control over everything. Your life is unmanageable. So, and I'll dig into that point a little bit more as we wrap this up, but with one of my triggers of the 3, this controlling behavior piece, at the jump, I have to get rid of control. To even walk down the path of recovery, I have to understand that my life is unmanageable. I don't have the tools within me anymore to handle this.
Yeah.
And humiliation and humility about that is there's a kind of radical humiliation and humility that goes along with that. So you say, I have a problem, and what I know at the moment isn't sufficient to solve it. Great, because now you've opened yourself up to the possibility of learning something. Because you say, I don't know enough to fix this. It's like, okay, well, you could learn. And one of the things that's so interesting about people is that if they decide they have a problem, and they also notice that they could learn, the probability that they will learn goes way up.
The first step is acknowledging that you are powerless.
That I thought was powerful, because it goes back to, and I've never seen this before until I saw that video. I've never thought about it this way, but the very notion for me to go down my recovery journey was to recognize I'm powerless. I'm powerless over alcohol. I'm powerless over whatever your drug of choice is. You're powerless over your addiction, whether you recognize it or not. I mean, we talk about it closer than it appears, that high-risk living. Well, high-risk living can also be translated as active drug use, active alcohol use, alcohol abuse. I would say in some senses for many people, just use. You're powerless over that. You're going nowhere with it. You have no tools yet to figure that out. And until you come to that place, you understand you have no control, and you are willing to, as Jordan Peterson described, be willing to learn more and be open to understanding more. You're going nowhere. And so that's relinquishing your control. And what I found very baffling to me is the very thing that caused me to be an addict, the very thing that I had to violate to even start my recovery journey to get better, was to give up that control. My triggers got me drinking and got me heavily in a mess, and one of them was controlling behavior. To get out of that, I had to recognize I have no control. My life is completely unmanageable. And as I start that through, then I recognize there's a place to put all those things that I need to have under control, but I don't have the tools to do it. I give them to God. And then we can start talking about the work in me, not in the world around me, to get me better. It all dances together, and none of it is me in control. It's me taking and absorbing new information and finding better ways of handling things, and handling the things that I'm supposed to be handling, but not in control of the entire environment of my entire life. I have no power at step 1. But as we travel this journey, and as I've traveled my journey, I'll speak for me. I'm saying we, so I don't feel so bad right now. But as I traveled my journey, controlling behavior still manifests itself as I get further and further down the road, because now things are going better, and I feel like I can take all that back again. And I start the whole freaking cycle again, when the only reason why recovery is a possibility for me is I recognized at one point in my life was unmanageable, and it was out of control. It was out of control, and I had nothing in me to get it under control. And guys, I hope this was useful to you. This has been a pretty powerful week in terms of education for me. It's oftentimes it happens like this. I think you'll find this too. And it's really the value in getting yourself involved in programs and groups and around community, tuning into YouTube channels like Chris and Retro. And hopefully I'm giving you some information you can work on. Just doing quick searches on topics to find out. It's easy to find. This thing with Jordan Peterson and Russell Brandt was readily available. But getting this information in, it starts to feed you, and being willing to hear new information is why you got at step 1 in the first place, why the spiritual nature of you got to the place you understood your life was unmanageable. And now you're open to learning the tools you need so that they become manageable again. And that is through, education and resources in the community that you're around. That's why isolation also is so dangerous. It's been powerful for me. These are lessons that I've been really rigorously trying to understand how to be better about. And as life, the good news about chaotic situations and downturns in life is that I find for me, I learn the most valuable lessons, and I come out stronger every single time. And it's not because I did something wonderful to get through the storm and look at me, I'm stronger than I ever was before. No, it's because I was probably pretty beat up, as I am now. And probably a lot of my defects are fully exposed. And the reason I'm going through the storms in the first place is so that I can correct those things, so I don't go back through at least that same storm again. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, comment, if you've got comments on this, I would have to think, I got a lot of comments relative to acceptance video that I did. I think this one probably hits home with a lot of you, given the fact that I've heard several people. I've been in meetings every day, and I've been going to meetings every day for quite some time now. And this subject has been coming up over and over again. And it's interesting because it's also coming up as many other people are talking about how rough life is right now for them. There's just this heavy realization that we don't have as much control as we once thought we did. And that, you know, acceptance and keeping ourselves aware that sometimes life is unmanageable and we need those around us to get through it. We need to lean at each other a little bit and make sure that we use the resources that are out there. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Check us out on Sunday when Sam and I do the special on there. Between now and then, I'm going to do every single thing I can do to stay out of trouble, and I hope you do too.